Hey, what's going on, everybody? David Noe with Speakeasy HR, presented by Payroll Partners. We are back at it for another awesome episode, episode 48. Cannot believe how fast this journey has gone with this fun podcast that I created. Have an awesome guest today that we're going to dive into a little bit of a topic that a lot of people are talking about, recruiting and how that all looks in this world today with the workforce. So I have Matt Charney on Speakeasy HR today. Matt, welcome. How are you today, my friend?
I'm going to talk about recruiting for an hour, so I'm doing awesome. Thank you.
There you go. I know you've been doing this for a little bit of time. And so for those who are new to Speakeasy HR, welcome. Thanks for joining, spending some time with us on this Monday. For those of you who have watched previous episodes, welcome back. Great to have you. And again, this is for us to all learn from Matt. So if you are watching live, chime in. The comment section is open. We will try to get to your questions as they come up. Playing the world famous envelope icebreaker game in a minute to hear more about Matt's background. But Matt, for those who don't know you, you do have a somewhat large following on LinkedIn. So I've been certainly following your work. But tell us about your background, like where you're in Dallas, Texas, right? You're living down south.
I guess Texas is its own thing. It's not really like
Yeah.
the South, right? And Dallas is its own thing within Texas. But I'm a California native, so I'm enjoying the heat here. But yeah, my name is Matt Charney, and I am the executive editor for ERE Media and for MediaBistro.com, which is the largest community for creative and media and publishing talent in the world. And so I have been just like analyzing and reporting the intersection of talent acquisition and technology for longer than I care to admit, but let's just say under 2 decades, but over one.
Okay. Well, good. So when you were younger, was this the kind of work you wanted to get into, or when you were in grade school, like what was your jam? What would you want to get into when you were younger?
When I was in grade school, I think I wanted to be president, but then when I got to high school, I started smoking weed. So like that probably like just threw that out of the consideration. But no, like it's weird. I don't know what I ever actually wanted to be other than like gentry, like a gentleman farmer might suit me well.
Yeah.
But I have this like curse, and that is I'm a pretty good writer. So I ended up going to film school and being a screenwriting major. And so I've just always been like pretty good at writing. So while I would say that I didn't know that I would be covering recruiting and HR, I actually find it really interesting, and I do write professionally. So, let's say 50-50 to that answer.
Yeah. No, that is awesome. I think the one piece that I took away from last week's episode was try to find something that you're good at that you can do as a career or a side gig. And, the way that the work is going with the workforce and you got to enjoy what you do. Life is short. You got to try to find something that you're talented in. My kids, are teenagers, so I'm trying to help them navigate into the workforce. So, at some point they'll be out of the house and they'll have to get their own job. So, well, that's awesome. The one question I do try to ask everybody before we get into the envelope icebreaker game too is best piece of advice you've ever received in your professional career.
That the way to ingratiate yourself as an employee or contractor or whatever is by asking, how can I help? And the way to alienate anyone is asking, what can you do for me? So there you go.
I got my new toy, Matt. This is my mini air horn.
Nice.
If you have not seen these online, they're easy to find, but they are so fun. So I do play this every now and then. Sometimes I forget about it, so I got to keep it really close to my setup here. So
I like it. It's like playoff hockey. Let's do it.
That's right. Good old hockey. So one more thing before we get to your topic, and we are live. So if you are watching, thanks for joining. If you have questions along the way, let us know. So I got 15 envelopes here, Matt. This is brand new questions for my second year of this of this podcast. So I'm going to give you about 10 seconds to think about a number, and then we're going to get to your number. Hold on one second. All right, what do you got?
13.
13. I don't know if anyone's picked that one yet.
See, and statistically, that is the least picked number. This out of a 1 to 15 or 1 to 20 scale. So let's see it.
Okay. All right. This is a good one for your topic. If your career had a mascot, what would it be?
Oh man. Let's see. If my career had a mascot, it would be like, I think maybe I'm trying to think like what's a really frenetic animal that moves around and pisses everyone off. Maybe a Pomeranian.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like
Trouble sitting still. People seem to like me, but once in a while I'll get snarled at by another dog.
I love it. Good deal. Well, thanks for playing that. Hopefully people that do not know Matt knows a little bit more about him. So just a couple of messages from our sponsor. I'm also part of the Work Defined podcast community. So if you have not gone out to workdefined.com, definitely check them out. Over 60 podcasts, HR, business, payroll, you name it. There will be other podcasts outside of Speakeasy HR out there. So go check them out. But 1 minute to have a couple of words from our presenting sponsor, Payroll Partners, and then we're going to dive into your topic, Matt, and we'll get to it here. So just give me 1 minute, grab a drink of water, and we'll see you on the other side here real quick.
Finding a new employee takes time and money. For one position on a single job board, you could easily spend a minimum of $5 to $10 a day advertising a job post. It's worth noting that the average time it takes to hire a new employee is 36 days. However, it can take longer than that. You could find yourself paying hundreds of dollars a month for a single job board. And if you're using multiple job boards for multiple positions, this could add up to thousands of dollars a month. There is a much simpler and more affordable way of finding the right candidate. At Payroll Partners, we offer an applicant tracking system to help manage your hiring process. Our ATS is customizable, allowing you to decide which days you want to run the job and when to close it so you don't break the bank. And this feature lets you e-blast your network, posting jobs on multiple boards at once, all managed in one location. Payroll Partners, elevating your payroll and HR experience.
So if you are on the hunt for a new payroll software, HR software, want all-in-one, look us up, payrollpartners.net. Look me up on LinkedIn. Happy to connect. I've been around the block in HR and systems, and I know what's out there. So we have dedicated service, great technology, and can customize it for your business. So, Matt, we have connected for quite some time now. I don't remember actually when we scheduled this, but it was a while back. And
yeah, well, it's probably 2 quarters ago. So
yeah, and I'm scheduling people till next November. So the people I talk to right now, I'm probably not going to talk to them for a little bit. But you and I have connected, and I've been a huge fan of your work for quite some time. That I've been in HR for almost 2 decades, and I've seen your name on the Twitter sphere and the X and the social media out there. So I've definitely been familiar with your work. So I'm so glad to have you on and bringing your talent in your work to Speakeasy HR. So when I connected with you, we talked about your topic, and you came up with this one about are employers acquiring talent or inventory? So what does that really mean? And how does that mindset shape the way companies are approaching hiring?
yeah, so there is a tendency in talent acquisition where for some reason, and there's always that never metaphor it didn't like, but it's recruiters are not ever content to just be recruiters. So it's always like recruiters are marketers, recruiters are sales, recruiters are like whatever, insert here. But if you're looking for the closest parallel, I think, and also the most opportunity, if you're kind of looking at how to build a future career in talent acquisition, as well as some of the skill sets and disciplines I think are emerging and to support that, what it really is recruiting has emerged as a supply chain management function. Quite simply, we have moved from sort of like this very human, high touch, feeling based sort of function into a numbers driven procurement function where the entire goal is to balance the three goals of supply chain management, which are supply and demand, right? Critical. COGS, cost of goods sold. In this case, I would say that would be cost per hire, right?
Yeah.
So you're trying to manage that. And then third and finally, moving the goods essentially down from point A to point B as quickly as possible, which is, your hiring process. So those being the three goals of supply chain management, I think that they're quite overlapping with the goals of talent acquisition. Also consider the fact that when, I don't know if you know Glenn Caffey, by the way, and why this sticks out. So Glenn, SourceCon champion for years. I think he's the SVP of strategy at Randstad now. But he had, when they first kind of came up with the stack ranking capabilities on LinkedIn, it's like jobs for you. He'd put up a post that was like, I looked at my profile and said all these procurement jobs would be great. And the reason why is they all had sourcing titles, right? And I think that when you have somebody who's like an ultimate thought leader in the space, kind of missing that delta there, it's interesting because essentially everything starts with sourcing in both functions and everything ends with a purchasing decision in the other, right? So I think it's something we need to talk more about, particularly as high volume and hourly become much more important.
Right. So transactional versus relational hiring. How do you think too many organizations still treat recruiting as transaction filling seats instead of like a long-term investment in people? Like, what are you seeing?
So I think that too many organizations actually continue to look at it as this long-term investment in filling seats and not enough look at it as transactional, actually. So here's the thing. You're seeing employee tenures all over the board, like any executive level. There are various reasons for this, but start to plummet. So I think the average most recently across all positions in the US workforce, it's around 2.1 years, or what we used to call job hopping, but that's your average tenure right now. And for the talent that is fully employed, is any good recruiter knows, there's a huge market demand for certain skill sets, right? That is always unmet. So I think that the people who are more on the executive side, there's a good chance that recruiters have already built relationships with them. Our companies already built relationships with them. So they have a finite amount of talent, right? And so that's a little bit different game. But when it comes to, let's say, 90 to 95% of the positions that are filled, all you are doing is trying to find a candidate just in time who's on the market, who's what we call QIA, qualified, interested, and available, and who meets your price range, right? That's what you're always dancing around to pre-screen, is how much money does this person whose resume looks good make? So I think that given the fact that nobody really cares, we say we care about positioning our companies as this long-term career destination, our employer of choice, whenever we use our employer branding, but that's a fallacy. The fact is, if you get 2 good years out of a person, you're great. And we're not filling jobs really in order to do that. We're still filling requisitions. So if you're only hiring for a role, you're getting essentially an order from inventory, and then your job becomes warehouse management.
Yeah. Do you see that number, like fast forward 5 years from now, and that average tenure, do you see that going down more than that?
No, I see it going up, probably.
Do you?
Yeah, I do. And the reason why is because I think that the days of a workforce being primarily W-2 or projects or those days are sort of going to disappear at a large basis, particularly among knowledge workers, I think. Obviously, hourly and retail, I don't see a tremendous amount of things that are going to impact. But when you sort of look at the professional sector, let's talk about tenure there. The people who are fully employed and who've been there for a while we're starting to see it right now. There's a certain reticence to leave that job, given not only the macroeconomic stuff, but just the narrative and the uncertainty that's going on about AI replacing jobs, job elimination, and all that sort of thing. So I think 5 years from now, if you are fully employed in a W-2 job, you are likely to be holding it very precious.
Yeah. Yeah, I look at resumes weekly, if not daily, and in my role as part of my role is hiring for our staff. And I'll look at resumes and I'll send it on to the manager, and the first thing they always say to me is, well, that person had a different job every 12 months, 18 months. It's like, so I still see it all the time. And it's like, I really want to know why. Like, is it because of a layoff? Is it because of obviously the last 5 years or so? It's been very uh, difficult to talk to somebody that has not been laid off. Feel like at some point somebody has been laid off in their career. So it is fascinating. And as I've got, like I said, kids that'll be in the workforce in the next 10 years, it's like, I'm trying to help them get ready to get into their first big boy job and get out of school. And so I'm always fascinated by that. So how about data and the human factor? So with so much emphasis on analytics and AI and automation, how can employers balance that data-driven decision making with the human side of like talent acquisition?
So, yeah, I think that what we need to do is essentially, to use a supply chain metaphor, look at what's called single point of failure. And single point of failure is when you look at a process and you identify the one bottleneck that breaks everything down. And if you've been in talent acquisition for longer than 5 minutes, you know exactly where the single point of failure is, and that's your hiring manager, right? And so your relation, and again, I speak with a little bit of a bias because my enterprise recruiting experience was for companies like Disney and Warner Brothers. So
Mhm.
it's a little bit larger and more complex answer to this. But most of the time, when you have a high rec load, you're not going to have a relationship with a candidate that goes past onboarding or the first 90 days or so, right? Potentially, if you do a good job with that recruit in a couple of years, you'll see them again if they're going for another internal job. But we waste a lot of time building relationships with candidates when I don't know 100% that that's our job, because it doesn't matter. I think that the relationship that matters is hiring managers. It's a much more finite group that you can have much more control over. I think educating yourself around their preferences, around their work, and around how they lead and what they're looking for, like all those intangibles, that's really where the focus needs to be, rather than trying to have these candidate conversations like at scale, right? And that to me is just unnecessary unless they're already in the offer phase, in which case you're again just trying to finalize that transaction. So once you can fix that single point of failure, then the process becomes much more smooth. And if you can move towards hiring manager self-service, then you're actually even better, because all you're doing at that point, again, like in inventory, you're removing friction and you are fulfilling it.
Right. It's always a fascinating timing of filling jobs and getting applicants that are seriously looking for a job like yours. There have been times where I want to make an offer to somebody, they got a job, they turned down my offer, and it just happens. So it's like getting that right balance and timing of your process to hire is so critical. And the hire manager plays a factor in that. Everybody that's deciding, who to make an offer to and getting that offer. Because a lot of people, if they're going out and they are skilled and they are qualified, they're probably going to get multiple job offers within, the time frame that they're, actively looking. So you're not going to be the only company that they're going to talk and potentially get a job offer from. So I'm always leery of delaying the process any longer than we need to. But you obviously want to make the right decision on which one you're going to make an offer to. So timing is so critical. How about employer brand implications? So how does this inventory mindset really affect the employer brand and the overall candidate experience, would you say?
So first off, I think that the candidate experience, in addition to having been a relatively silly thing to have talked about ever, because what we did was we went out and defined user interface and user experience as candidate experience, which I guess is true to a certain extent. But here's the thing: we should call it applicant experience, because no candidate, which is somebody who is still in process and who's minimally qualified, has a bad experience. On the minute they're out of process, that's when we start talking about it. But look, here's the thing. We are moving absolutely away from the central tenets, I say, of candidate experience, with the exception of letting people know their status. But at the same time, that's been a function that you can mass disposition and receive automated results forever, right? That's not a new function. But as we go to this mechanism of really automated stack ranking and matching, not only at the application, but sort of across the entire process up to interviews, right? And likely background checks as well would fall into that. So you have an entirely essentially automated process. What that means is you go faster, but without human intervention in there, you're essentially going to be relying on price point in order to figure out at the end, because that's really the only sort of touch that you have to make. So I do think employer branding is really important, but that's why I think it's also just from like a procurement perspective, it is your job to constantly be doing a couple of things. One is what we call visual merchandising. And that's something that companies never pay attention to for some reason when they're building like their career sites or their ads. But that's the phenomenon where if you're looking like an Amazon, essentially you're more likely to click a certain area of the screen, certain button or whatever than somewhere else. And this is a very, very important like element of behavioral psychology and science. So I think just simply by figuring out what candidates want to do on career sites, which is what they want to search and apply for jobs, I think being more mindful of where you put those inventory, where you put the positions are really important. I think sourcing, again, becomes really important because we spend so much time sourcing external candidates and having this preference for putting up a job, waiting for applicants to come in, whatever. But the fact of the matter is simply that 90% of effort accounts for about 10% of hires. Whereas if you look at internal mobility and referrals, you have about, I would say, less than 10% of the effort for 90% of the hires. So if you're thinking with the procurement mindset of sourcing where you are the most likely to find goods at cost you're going to sell, then your employer branding becomes less important than externally than it does internally. So focusing on activating your workforce as a force multiplier, that really becomes what the game is about. I think that, frankly, external candidates right now have no value in as much as they're either likely sitting in their ATS or, to your point, already talking to everyone. So if you focus on, again, internal, so that channel, and you focus on referrals, so getting that channel to be activated, then you don't even have to worry about the external sourcing component because you're wasting your time.
Right. What is your take on companies that post jobs that truly aren't even available? So if you have a list of jobs, you're getting good applicants, but that job isn't even open right now, to try to build a pipeline. Is that something that you have seen more or less? And is that a good idea or bad idea?
Yeah, so I think that it's a good idea. First off, one, it's companies are forced to do this because of how job boards sell inventory, which is done by slots. So you're just kind of wasting money if you don't have all your slots filled, right? And so that's why you see a lot of that. But I think, again, putting ourselves in the supply chain management, essentially your talent pipeline is to think about as a warehouse. And there's nothing wrong with having a warehouse that is full, even overstocked, right? There's nothing that's wrong with that as long as there's no costs associated with storing the inventory, which in this case there's not. So I think if we look at like the talent pool as being a warehouse, what you need to look at is your CRM as being what's called a WMS, which is like a warehouse management system, right? So how do you most effectively manage the extant inventory that you have, right? So what we then get into is just in time, right? Versus stockpiling talent. We always err to just in time. People in procurement will tell you that is how you end up paying the cost of convenience and have absolutely no power. So I think that there needs to be more of an effect on re-engagement strategies. Again, like don't let the inventory sit there. Try to move the good inventory you have.
Yeah.
but also understand that passive candidates, we do love them, but their shelf life, if you think of a perishable good, is much longer than an active candidate, to your point. So always prioritize active candidates if you are in the place where you need to do so.
Yeah. So let's talk about the role of technology that's constantly changing, and you can't go a day without people talking about AI. So is HR tech helping or hurting the issue? And are the tools designed to really find talent or simply just manage that inventory a little bit more efficiently right now?
So I don't know that anyone finds talent from this technology necessarily. It's really kind of Taylorism or scientific management, which is two things. It's trying to break down the process into just basically micro units that can be very closely measured, and then capturing that data absence of context, and then trying to spin that into something that looks like progress, when in fact all you are doing is showing historical productivity. So there are a lot of kind of, I would say, concerns, but HR technology is neither good nor bad for any of this. It's kind of how we use it, right? I think if you're talking about high volume, high turnover, sort of like hourly work, it's great. And I think it's great for a couple of reasons. One, you have a workforce that can now use their mobile phone to do everything from looking for jobs to checking in and doing time and attendance. So you really have lowered a lot of barriers and broadened opportunity, right? And at the same time, you have the ability to kind of take that volume and make it manageable. I do think that if you're going, as you kind of go up an org chart, it hurts because of the fact that so many companies are making AI so ubiquitous that I think that employer branding is going to become less of a marketing activity and more of a relationship building function. In as much as you're the only person they know at the organization, you're going to represent the employer brand, right? So that really needs to be where the focus. But again, I don't know how long any of these stacks are going to be independent tools. And again, I see this going towards procurement. You're already starting to see that for contractors, right? Because you have vendor management systems, and those are essentially a procurement module. But more importantly, you have Workday, Oracle, SAP, about 80 to 85% total market share. And those already are ERPs with built-in procurement modules. So why you are using a completely separate system in order to essentially affect something that's already been installed and probably configured a little bit better is beyond me, right? So yeah, I think though, when you look at things just kind of down the line, all AI really is predictive modeling, which is demand forecasting in procurement speak, right? So I don't see that we're doing a whole lot different other than getting better insights in order to both price and manage supply and demand more effectively in the future.
Yeah. We are live on LinkedIn and YouTube with Matt Charney. If you have a question, chime in the comments section. Would love to hear from you. I've got a few more for you, Matt, before we jump off. So the power dynamic shift right now in the labor market, where employees have more choice and transparency, are employers being forced to like rethink how they value talent right now?
I don't know the answer to that question, to be honest with you, because I think every player's values talent separately. So for me to say more, there's a very different baseline. I think that what you're seeing are the errors of the past continuing to cycle through, which is we are existing in a market where there is often more supply for certain skill sets and candidates than there is associated demand.
Yeah.
And so as a result of that, I think there's a little bit of hubris setting in. And so then when the market shifts, companies are essentially screwing themselves again when they have to go back, hire new workforces, rebuild relationships, reinstitute institutional knowledge and all that sort of thing. But here's what I think the biggest mistake that companies are kind of making right now is thinking that they're special, right? And like every role kind of looks the same. And if people are complaining, oh, we're getting so many applications, it's because of AI. If you've ever actually used the ATS as a recruiter, you know that AI is not helping with speed or process most of the time. The problem is you have really generic job descriptions, and people are just doing old school keyword searching and getting through the application as quickly as possible. So instead, really focus, I would say, more on job descriptions. That's the only document that matters in employer branding, right? And trying to convey your message through that. It's so ignored, but I think it's so important when it comes to this. But I think that we oversell culture and cultural alignment. That is less key, I think, to achieving better results than process alignment, right? I think we start a lot of times looking at all these problems with HR goals in mind, which is dumb. They need to be business goals, and how can HR help support and fulfill them? And finally, work isn't no longer a place you go; it's a thing you do. And so, for me as a company, I am looking at the statistics and I am trying to figure out how to add the most flexibility and optionality so that I'm not a great place to work, right? Which is the list everyone wants to be on. I want to be the best place to get work done. And what that looks like, I think if you leave it up to the candidate, you're probably gonna have a better alignment than any culture, vision, or values document.
Yeah, you just kind of you answer the next question I had about just the competitive advantage with culture and the way that I see a lot of people going back into the office, less work at home kind of situation, and rightfully so. I feel like a lot of people that have enjoyed working from home are kind of sick of it. Like I wouldn't be able to do it every day. I think some people do enjoy it. They don't want to go into an office. They don't want to travel, commute. They're saving money on gas, but I like to interact with people. I like to connect in person, talk to employees, talk to new hires, recruit, do all the other projects that I have going on, but also be in an office setting and talk to people and collaborate. So it's very uh, it's out there still. I think a lot of people are still working remote, but I think as people get jobs, I always ask, like, are you looking for fully remote? Because if you are, I probably am not the best place for you, and we just don't offer that. Um, some companies do still, and that's totally fine. So, you know, um, it's all very specific in the industry. I think a lot of these questions you really do, if you're listening to this, you really just got to see what industry you're in, your competitors, and what they are potentially doing to attract that talent, and find a way to shift in the next few years and prepare to set yourself apart from your industry competitors. And how can you do that to find better talent, retain the talent you have, develop the talent you have, and use the technology around you to maybe not necessarily eliminate jobs with technology and AI, but help everybody be more efficient. So, um, looking ahead, so what do you think the future of talent acquisition looks like if companies truly are starting to treat people as their greatest asset, not just part of their like pipeline?
I think we're going to see talent acquisition kind of reorged around capabilities rather than headcount. So much more functional alignment than anything else, right? So I think you're going to start seeing sourcing, in as much as that's going to still be a little bit of a need, or relationship building become much more centralized. It'll be the delivery of that inventory that becomes decentralized. So everyone's kind of working out of the same single source of truth. I think you're going to stop seeing like kind of this is the opposite, recruiters being a center of excellence. Like this is our corporate recruiting group, and really start embedding more with the business and acting more as strategic advisors and people who are able to deliver business and market intelligence, as opposed to this person may be looking for a job. The best competitive intelligence tool out there are job descriptions of your competitor, because they'll tell you whatever they're doing in there, right? So I think that we're going to start seeing a little bit of a shift there. And then finally, I think what you're going to do is you are starting to start seeing what we now call talent ops start looking a lot more like supply and demand planning. Mm-hmm. And so what that really just breaks down to, I think, is a change in skills towards like sourcing ops, vendor management, stakeholder alignment. I think the recruiter of tomorrow looks a lot more like a supply planner than a sourcer, certainly, and that full desk is now redefined to mean full support of a entire function or business unit rather than just a full part of a hiring cycle. So more depth, less breadth.
Yeah. Last question, and it's more about just general HR as part of the workforce right now and how it's going to shift. Maybe people coming into their first HR role or recruiting role, or people that are burned out in HR. I've been in HR for a long time, and I enjoy what I do right now. I'm not burned out. It's really an exciting time to be in HR. So what advice would you give people in those situations right now?
So people like looking in HR. So I would say that a couple things. One, that we always talk about like building a seat at the table. So I'll do that in HR terms. Like I say, if you want a seat at the table, you have to have a plan for how you're going to build that seat. So that's done a couple ways. One is we use data to report right now. We're big on dashboards. I think you need to use that to be able to forecast.
Yeah.
And that means modeling scenarios, quantifying outcomes. And if you get pushback, rather than saying, oh, we'll figure it out or making a business case, you just need to be clear in your approach of what the trade-offs for every decision they make are going to be. So scenario analysis is really important. And finally, understand what finance cares about and learn to speak that language. I guarantee it's not stuff like candidate experience or employer value proposition.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's perfect. So you are the executive editor at ERE Media and Media Bistro.
Yeah.
So tell us about what your focus is moving forward and how can people find more about that?
So ERE obviously has been around forever. It's a giant website dedicated to recruiting news. So ERE.net, I'd encourage you to go and subscribe to that, and you'll start seeing my bylines content a couple of times a week in your inbox. Media Bistro, it's actually used to be owned by Ad Age, but it is the largest community for creative and media professionals in the world. So working on essentially helping to build up content and community just around media and publishing jobs. So a lot of fun.
Okay, absolutely. And then your website, Matt Charney?
MattCharney.com. Easy to find. So hopefully if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Matt, this has been great. I learned a lot. Hopefully everybody that has listened live have as well. But again, check out Matt on his website and all of his work, or connect with him on LinkedIn. Create some great content out there like he has for quite some time. So Matt, really appreciate your time, my friend. Hopefully we'll stay connected. And next week, have a great brand new episode, brand new guests. So take a look at my profile and take a look at who will be on. But it's Casey Webster with My HR Extension. Cannot wait to have her on and all the other guests coming up. So Matt, best of luck in the future, and hopefully we'll stay connected, and appreciate your time today.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you for having me.
All right. Take care, everybody.